From the shadowy depths of the city, where justice and mystery intertwine, emerges a broadcast as daring and vigilant as the masked Avenger himself. You are tuned in to the Green Hornet Case Files, unveiling the legacy and cultural significance of one of the greatest crime fighters of all time. Now, let the adventure begin. Here are your hosts, Kory and Greg.
That'd be us.
It is us.
I are Greg.
I are Kory.
I don't know why we are saying things these ways. Yeah, because we have writers on, and I know it drives them crazy. That's what we're going to do. Hey, welcome to episode 23. Is that what it is?
I believe it's 23.
Oh man,
Trying this new format again, and I'm loving it, man.
You know, so far I am absolutely loving it as well. And the beauty is with our two guests, they can both hear the intro, and they can actually hear everything that's going on in the background. And I kind of like that. And if one of them says something bad, I can
You get to buzz
always get to buzz them, and they can actually hear that, which is great. So, you know, I'm laying the ground rules out right now as we speak. So Green Hornet Case Files, episode number 23, and we've had some great comments in regards to our conversation last time around with what was his name? Who was that?
Oh, wait, Mr. Sebring?
Oh, you mean Scott? Yeah, that's the guy. The forum has been, you know, kind of lighting up over the fact that Scott was on. I think it's Scott just basically, you know, making all the comments himself, but that's okay.
Hey, that's what you get when you run the board.
when it's your show, you
Right?
can make the rules, I guess. So I don't have an awful lot of news that has come along in this last week. That's the problem with the Green Hornet is we get little, you know, spurges of, you know, spurts of spurges. Is that a word? Spurges?
No, it is now.
Okay, it is now.
But it's always kind of feast or famine, because the way it kind of went is we either have a whole lot of stuff to talk about,
yeah,
or nothing at all.
Nothing. Yeah.
But we have two gentlemen that we're very excited to talk to.
Yeah, and we're going to get to them here just momentarily. One quick note in from Todd Stutz. Says, I meant to write about the Dreamcast episode earlier, but time got away. He's thought that perhaps, you know, we were talking during the Dreamcast episode about who we thought maybe would be a good Green Hornet, you know, a replacement for Van Williams. And you and I kind of differ on this when we talked about it. The name Alec Baldwin came up.
So I understand. We're talking Shadow era Alec Baldwin.
Yeah,
not Baldwin now, right?
Right.
But so that's just, I think that's where that comes from. I think he could have done it, but not and be the Shadow. It would have had to have been one or the other.
Right. Well, and that's part of my issue with what's happening in this realm. Just watched the new trailer for the new Fantastic Four, and Reed Richards is not the Mandalorian. I don't get it, you know?
So I don't know. I'm actually really jazzed on this casting, to be honest with you.
Really?
For the Fantastic Four, yeah. Reed's not my favorite part of the Fantastic Four. I mean, obviously Ben Grimm, right?
Yeah, it's clobbering time.
And Ben being played by what's his name?
That guy.
Cousin Eddie, Ricky, I can't remember his name, from The Bear. He's awesome. He's fantastic on The Bear, and I think he's going to be awesome as Ben Grimm. I think he's going to be great.
I guess we'll see how that plays. But in let me throw this back out though, in regards to Todd's comment, is that we're talking about from this moment right now, forward, not who would have been a great, you know, because there's a lot of great people who probably could have filled those shoes in the past.
Well, and so I posed it as past, present, and future. when I threw that question out there.
Yeah.
So I get why people are, and I
fault.
love this mental exercise.
Yeah, it's your fault.
Trying to think of, it's always my fault.
Yeah.
But trying to think of moving forward, like, who would we cast right now?
And the other person that he threw in from the past, because it would just not work right now, was Jonathan Frakes, and that's where you and I had a divergent.
Yeah. Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
Riker is a striking man, and we disagree on that.
You know, and I like Jonathan. I like him a lot, especially as a director. I really, really respect him as a director, having done little mini directing things. But as, you know, the hunky guy, I understand, you know, but it's just not, I wouldn't have dated him. Let's put it that way.
So when we're talking about now, I think the main thing that we should focus on is making sure it's not Timothy Chalamet.
I totally agree. I did see the Bob Dylan thing.
How was it?
A complete unknown. I haven't had that much fun and enjoyed a film that much in a very, very long time. But Chalamet as Britt Reid,
not gonna work. Not gonna work
unless he like really, really beefs up. Hey, I do want to jump over as you kind of alluded. We have a couple of guys that we are excited to have on the podcast, and the Kickstarter campaign that we talked about last episode is underway, and we are recording this on Wednesday, February 5th at this point, and I think we're only just a few $100s away from getting that Kickstarter totally funded. And by the time this actually airs and everybody's listening to it, we'll be into the depths of next levels, and
we'll be into stretch goals.
Yes. Green Hornet Epic Anthology and Moonstone Books, our friend Joe there putting the whole thing together, and I've been having conversations back and forth with these guys, and I'm excited to have writers David, is it Boop?
Yep, just like Betty Boop.
We're going to talk about that later, don't you? All right.
Pennsylvania Boop?
Yes, as a matter of fact, from the Pennsylvania Boops.
There you go. Yeah. He's not a horizontal boop, but now that was such an inside joke. Nobody's going to get that one. Yes, I'm sorry. Author, editor, screenwriter, award-winning essayist. I want to know what that is. And then Keith R.A. DeCandido, is that right?
No, it's DeCandido.
DeCandido.
Everybody gets it wrong. It's okay.
All right. Well,
I get it wrong.
The Pennsylvania DeCandidos?
No, he's a New Yorker.
I'm from the New York and New Jersey DeCandidos, although my mother's family comes from PA. But anyway, yes, I am glad to be here.
Yeah, Keith has been writing fiction professionally for 30 years and 60 novels, 50 comic books. I might even have read something that you've written.
It's certainly possible.
And a martial artist at that.
Yes.
What is your martial art of choice?
I'm a 4th degree black belt in karate. It's an Okinawan style called Kenshikai. We're very small.
Okay.
But I've been doing that for 20 years. And I still train regularly, and I also teach karate to adults and children, which is and I have to say that at least part of what got me interested in doing karate in the first place was watching Bruce Lee on the Green Hornet as a kid. So,
Keith, I've never heard that before.
Yes. It's also was the inspiration for my story in the anthology, which we'll get to over the course of this interview, I'm sure.
Yes, we do want to talk about that. Moonstone Books and this new anthology that's coming out. And if you haven't checked out any of Moonstone's anthologies, in fact, I'm rereading one right now, and Kory, you probably could guess which one of those anthologies. It's something about case files.
I was going to say, does it have a similar name?
It's very, very similar name. And again, I don't know if Joe's suing me or if I'm suing him. I don't know who's going to get that.
Let's not get litigious.
Watch your language there, buddy. Let's watch your language. David was telling me before you popped on there that he got fired for utilizing a word in radio, and I don't know if we can say litigious on a podcast or not.
It's a podcast. You can pretty much say what you want, I think.
Yeah, no, it's not regulated by the same things that say radio was when we were in there. Not that even radio these days is being regulated all that much.
So do you want to say the word that you got fired for on the podcast?
I want to hear
urinate.
Urinate.
I got fired from a radio station for saying the word urinate. Yeah, so I'm like your modern day Johnny Fever. So from WKRP, it wasn't booger, it was urinate. Yeah,
yeah, love it.
Yeah.
What is it? What is it about the Green Hornet, guys? What is it about the Green Hornet that keeps people coming back like this?
Well, the reason I was excited to become part of this project is the Green Hornet has a lot of things that it originated within the course of its original broadcast. The idea of a hero pretending to be a villain to be able to get inside the system, right? Nobody had done anything like that previous. When you had alter identities, it usually was, somebody who was, like a lawyer or, or a playboy, something that, even police officers and stuff like that who would do their day job and then have this second job at night patrolling the cities as a vigilante. But the unique setup with Britt Reid and the triple identity really, and working within both the criminal system with his contact with DA Scandlin, and then also the criminal, it adds a layer of complexity that you didn't see with other pulp heroes at the time. And I think that's what brings us back to it is this is a guy who has to not only keep one identity, but two secret. One from the criminals and one from the people in his everyday life. And I find that fascinating and exciting. And Keith, what about you?
What you said about him being a criminal is one of the things I really like that appealed to me about him as a kid, just because that was different from all the other heroes. The most of the other masked heroes that wandered around were nominally actually heroes, or if they were viewed as villains, it wasn't on purpose. Like the way Spider-Man was often vilified in the press, or the way the X-Men were thought of as bad guys. They didn't want to be thought as bad guys, whereas the Hornet did it on purpose as a ploy, which I always thought was really cool. And a really nifty little twist on things. And I freely admit that also the fact that Kato is awesome was a big factor as well. You can't underestimate the influence that Bruce Lee had, in particular from the TV show. But even the radio show was different. It was a hero who deliberately avoided being considered a hero. In order to do the job better, which was just a wonderful twist.
Yeah, and that too, you mentioned the radio and Kato in the radio, and then the serials and stuff like that. That was a big thing. And of course, because of the changing times in World War II and all of that, Kato's origin often got changed around.
Yes, he was Filipino. Yes.
Yeah, exactly, and stuff like that. So the idea that this is a character, though, we look now at the past and say, there's some unfortunate things that happened during that time, but that this character has steadfast throughout the incarnations and years, never lost his ethnic culture and never lost his kick-assness. Did you have to buzz me on ass? Are we good with kick-ass?
Would you like to be buzzed?
No, I would not. It's too early for that.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, it's great. And then the other thing that really appeals about the Hornet is this kind of style, right? Like there's a swagger to the Green Hornet, right? Like when he goes into a scene, especially in the TV show, Van Williams went in and he controlled every aspect of the scene, right? And people, you could see people were intimidated by the character, the crime lord of the Green Hornet, right? Like he didn't ever go in that he wasn't the most dangerous guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And well, Kato being more dangerous.
I was going to say Kato was the most dangerous guy in the room.
Well, he was the partner of the Green Hornet. So the fact that this dangerous crime lord had an even more dangerous sidekick, right? Or partner. Now, this is why we called the anthology Green Hornet and Kato, is because Kato is not just a sidekick. He is truly a partner to Britt Reid. And we wanted to make sure that that was clear and evident in this one. In our previous anthologies, it was just the Green Hornet. But for this one, which is a 90th anniversary anthology, that we wanted to elevate Kato to a, co-lead role. And you'll find in the anthology, we even have at least a couple of stories where Kato's POV is prominent.
Yeah, and that happens a lot more, I think, as we move forward. We're seeing the new film that is supposedly in some form of development at this point, being called The Green Hornet and Kato.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're just going to see that.
Yeah, a lot of that, part of it at least, is the trend toward that you see toward more diversity and acknowledgement of people who aren't white, which is a trend I'm all in favor of. But also the fact that for a lot of people, I mean, one of the reasons why the 1966 show has endured is because it was the starting point for Bruce Lee's popularity in America, which was considerable.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a martial artist. I train at a karate dojo here in the Bronx. But if you walk around any city or suburb, you're going to see a whole mess of martial arts dojos, a lot of which opened up in the 70s and 80s. And the main reason why they did was because of Bruce Lee.
Because of Bruce.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
The everybody, from throughout the 1970s in particular, everybody, half the people who joined up with any kind of martial art, whether it was karate, kung fu, taekwondo, whatever, were doing it because they wanted to be like Bruce Lee. And that still endures, even though, he died 50 years ago.
Right.
So as you go forward with the Hornet and making Kato we all understand that he's an integral part, but making him an equal part. And I think that is the one thing that the 2011 movie got right, was Kato was running the show. In that version. And I think that's the one thing that movie got right. But
I think it got more than that right. The problem was the thing it got wrong was casting the lead, which has unfortunately brought down all the rest of it.
You're absolutely right.
The actual script for that movie was a good Green Hornet script. But
I would disagree with that. I would go out and say I would disagree with that, because there's one major, I should say, not subtle, one major thing that film was missing, which was the transformation of the hero, from the bumbling idiot into the competent hero. And that scene towards the end where he trips and he destroys the tape and everything like that, I'm like, oh, come on. And
but if they'd actually cast a proper lead in the role, I don't think that scene would have even been there.
Correct. Or the soldering the head of his dad on backwards. I mean, come on.
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
but
Like
all that grew out of the casting of basically Rogen casting himself in the lead, which was the biggest mistake he made as a producer, was to cast himself. But in the movie, the fact that Kato was basically his equal partner was one of the things that was very appealing about it. And I know, I mean, I can't speak for all the other authors, but that was something I was very conscious of when I was writing my story, which was that they were, in terms of the partnership when they were out wearing masks and fighting crime and stuff, they were definitely equals. The public persona was of the Green Hornet as the main person, because that's part of the shtick, and part of what he's doing to show himself as being a villain is he's got to be appear to be the dominant one. There was a line I put in the story that I'm extremely proud of. There's one point where Kato is doing a thing, and it's out in Detroit, checking out a martial arts dojo that has recently opened up. And the line was, he was not dressed in the chauffeur's uniform he wore in his disguise, the disguise he wore as the Green Hornet's partner, nor the white tuxedo that he wore in his guise as Britt Reid's chauffeur.
yeah.
Both of those are disguises. And that's the real Kato is Britt Reid's equal. He just can't appear to be that in public, partly because Britt Reid is, famous publisher, and the Green Hornet is famous crime lord. He just goes by on the reputation of the person standing by the Green Hornet's side who will kill you as soon as look at you.
I love that thought. I had never connected that dot, that the white suit was also a disguise.
Mhm.
That
very much so.
just there's an eye opener for a guy who's old.
Well, yeah, because you look at the times, right? We have to, what we call the retrofuturism, where we look at the past through the eyes of today, and there's no other role that Kato really could have played in Britt Reid's life other than what he is. But he's never actually, that's not his true role. His role is to support Britt, but the guise of a major domo kind of thing is all smoke and mirrors as well. We have another great story in the anthology where Kato shows up to a meeting between gangsters alone, and they just automatically assume the Green Hornet is somewhere else in the building doing something.
Interesting,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, because they're so synonymous together, that Kato can use the threat of the Green Hornet, and he never says a word. He never says a word. It's all done with looks. He just shows up and crosses his arms, kind of thing, and looks, and it's like, okay, we get the message. The Green Hornet's not happy with us, right? Like,
Right.
So he's really good at understanding the power of what they've created together, that he doesn't even need. And the same with the Green Hornet. He can just show up, and people will say, where's his hitman, as it were. He's got to
Yeah.
be around here somewhere. And Green Hornet can say, of course he is, and he doesn't have to be, right? They're so synonymous together.
That's a thought process too, when you consider, the original Kato in the movie serials was Key Luke, who wound up
Right.
being Master Po in Kung Fu in the
Mhm.
70s. And he didn't have, I mean, I absolutely love Key Luke, and I'll watch anything that Key Luke is in, but I don't think that he had quite that presence of himself at the time. And what you guys are writing, and I'm going to make a leap here. I'm assuming that when you guys are putting pen to paper, or whatever it happens to be, that you are envisioning Bruce Lee as Kato, and the things that Bruce did and all the great films that he did, the looks, the motions, the body attitude and everything is coming through in your writing. Am I wrong?
No, and that's because that's the IP we have licensed. We have we've licensed Yeah, we licensed it, Moonstone licensed a TV series. So it is firmly set in the TV series
Okay.
era.
Okay.
Though we do some callbacks and homages to, say, some of the stuff from the radio. For example, we never saw the photographer Clicks.
Clicker
Yeah,
Benny. Yeah.
yeah, Clicker Benny. Clicker Benny in the TV show, if I'm not mistaken,
You
but
didn't know.
they were a character in the radio show, and we have some people who mention her in their story,
Mm-hmm.
right? In other stories, like one I wrote for Moonstone, Mr. X, who was in the radio but never the TV, probably would have been developed if it had been picked up for another season. But the criminal mastermind that is, working on the level that the Green Hornet is, um, they I brought that into basically the TV series era. So we will do homages to the others, the serials and so forth, and the radio. But our license is basically for the TV series, and so the instructions I sent out to everybody is to imagine another season of the TV series and write like you're writing for that.
So that actually brings me to a question that I've thought about quite a bit. And that's like, you guys are dealing with prime Hornet. That's the sweet spot.
Uh-huh.
But do you think that the Hornet works as a modern tale? Or does it have to be some sort of looking back?
No, I think it could absolutely work in modern times. I mean, that's not what we did here, and part of the fun of this anthology was doing it specifically in the late 1960s.
Right.
But having said that, yeah, I think you could absolutely do it in contemporary times.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot, and if there was a modern, now, of course, Kevin Smith is known for moving the timeline forward. Ron Foytier moved the timeline forward in both of their comics. The one Ron with now comics, and Kevin's with is it
Dynamite.
Dynamite. Yeah,
Yeah.
they moved them
Yeah.
forward a bit. But I thought, I was thinking, how would you do the Green Hornet today? And it would almost have to be a little bit of a bigger operation, and almost without a doubt, the Green Hornet, and I'm sure some people are going to scream about this. Green Hornet would have to be black, because if you look at Detroit, um, and the gangs that are set up in Detroit right now, and you look at where the focus is, if you wanted somebody to work within the gangs of Detroit, the person would have to be somebody with some more street cred than what Britt Reid came in with, right? It would have to be somebody who maybe came up through the gangs or whatever and knew the ins and outs of it, because gangs today are so much more complicated and are diversified in so many different ways than they were in the 60s, right? You had,
Or in the
the
30s when the radio show started. I mean,
Yeah,
he was
exactly.
created in the era of prohibition and racketeering, and that
yeah,
was that was mostly Italian. That was mostly Italian and Jewish mobsters.
yeah.
But and Irish mobsters. It was it was mostly white people,
Mhm.
and that that dictated what kind of person. Actually, I think the biggest change you'd have to make is being a newspaper publisher isn't exactly what it used to be. Uh, I'm not sure it would still work with him as being a newspaper publisher, but I'm not sure what the alternative is.
That's kind of my point, is so much that's key to the character is different now.
Hmm.
And
But
that's
it's not insurmountable though.
right.
No,
Right.
no. Let's take it from this point of view. Let's just say, for the example, um, I what I said about him being potentially African American. He could have, instead of a newspaper, he could have a recording studio, and he could be publishing R&B artists, rap artists, things like that, and still have that power, that credibility, that clout, because we look nowadays, and you look at your Suge Knight and Kanye's and all these people who are now either dead or in jail. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, this is where a lot of the power rests right now, is in the music industry, especially coming out of Detroit, Eminem, stuff like that. You got Motown. You've got all these things that you could use to take that character, modernize him, give him that same power and clout, and then have this secret identity nobody would ever suspect.
I do kind of love the idea of the Green Hornet fighting the insane clown posse. That's kind of that would be the greatest spinoff.
Epic rap battles of Detroit. Begin.
Don't ever throw something like that out to two writers, Kory, because you know what the next anthology is going to be.
Hey, get and run with it, please. I'll double
well,
Keith and
I were talking about the same problem with the Phantom. The whole white savior thing. That becomes difficult, especially if you move it into modern day.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
but even if you're keeping it in the period, it's still
dicey.
Yeah. Yeah. So what else would you like to know about the anthology?
Well, I just looked over at the page just a couple of minutes ago, and again, we're recording this on Wednesday, February 5th, and by the time we wind up actually airing this and getting it out for the general listenership, it probably will be fully funded. $11,752 of $12,000 goal. And
this close.
Yeah, that's really, really getting close. What kind of stretch? What are we looking for as far as stretch on this, guys?
So the first big stretch we have is getting interior illustrations for all the stories by none other than Dennis Calero, who did the Marvel Noir series. So not the Spider-Man Noir, but like Power Man Noir, X-Men Noir, Iron Man Noir. Those he did a lot of the art for those. We've already seen some stuff from him that's freaking amazing. The next goal after that, since hopefully by the time that this broadcast, maybe we've already reached that first stretch goal. Hint, hint, hint. From my lips to the Kickstarter God's ears. The next one is going to be an alternate cover by Dennis Calero, which we've seen the sketches for, and oh my God, it's awesome! It's so cool.
Nice.
And then after that, Timothy Zahn has already told people on our live stream broadcast that he's got a bonus story. If we reach his stretch goal, he's going to do a sequel to the story that's in the book that will be sent to the backers digitally. So those are our first three goals, our stretch goals. And then we've got some other interesting things planned, and those I'm keeping in my back pocket for right now.
All right. Well, if you haven't had the opportunity yet, be sure and get over on Kickstarter. Just type in Green Hornet, and it pops up as I think the first thing. There's something else that kicks in, but ignore it. It doesn't have anything to do with Green Hornet. And even if this hits the goal, which we're pretty sure it will here in the next probably few hours, keep throwing the money at it because we want those stretch goals. And knowing Joe the way that I don't know Joe real well, but knowing Joe the way that he keeps putting out Green Hornet stuff, and he and I have had some conversations about that, I'm looking forward to a lot more Green Hornet stories down the road.
Well, yeah, and along with the Green Hornet, he recently reacquired the Phantom, and he also got Mandrake the Magician.
Oh yeah,
so
Cool.
You're going to be seeing some of those guys teamed up as well. He does his double and triple shot mini books, mini anthologies, as they were, almost like a what are those called? Like a trade magazine.
Ace doubles?
What's that?
Nothing. I thought you meant the ace doubles.
Well, it kind of like the ace doubles, but more in a I'm the, words, right? I'm a writer, but
it happens. It happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
but these double and triple shots, many of who are available through the campaign, are being written by amazing authors like Jim Beard and so forth.
Yeah, we had
Uh,
Jim on the show here a while back.
oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
And we can get you some of the other authors over time too. Once you guys have a chance to read it, we can bring you in some of the authors. Unfortunately, not James Moore, who passed away. He wrote the story from the hospital.
Oh, wow.
He was at, and sent it in, and unfortunately, we lost him just a couple months after that. But we've got Timothy Zahn from Star Wars Thrawn. We've got Kevin J. Anderson, obviously Star Wars as well as Dune, and Bill Willingham was a huge snag. The
Of Fables?
yeah, Fables creator.
Yes, that's
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, who gave us a great story. And then along with Keith, we've got people like Matthew Baugh, who's written for Moonstone, just about, I think, every character Moonstone has had at some point. Matthew's awesome. We've got Megan Mackey, who's a good friend of mine, who gave a story that some people are going to go, well, that couldn't work. But then you think about it and you go, oh, that absolutely could fit in canon. Right. And so but it's great, and it sets up for sequels. So you might see her. Oh, and then Mike Haspel. I have to take a moment to talk about Mike Haspel. So Mike writes for Warhammer 40K,
Oh,
along with a
nice.
lot of other things. Amazing author. And he gave me, like, he's leading off the book because he gave us, it almost reads like a screenplay for an episode. It is so perfect within the context of the Green Hornet series. Absolutely loved the story, wanted to lead off with it. And so, yeah, that's great. Mary Fan, and then Sumiko Solston, who this is their first tie-in work. And so very exciting for them. Keith recommended them to Joe, and very, very.
I actually was the one. I was the one who brought in not just Sumiko, but also Mary and Megan.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
The Mary, Sumiko's a wonderful writer. She's a Bram Stoker Award nominated poet, as well as a horror writer. And I thought they would bring in a very nice, different perspective on it. Mary is an amazing writer. I've worked with her on a bunch of different projects, including some shared world stuff with Michael J. Friedman for the Phenomenons anthologies that Mike put together. And she's written, we've been in several of the same anthologies. She's bought some stories from me. I've bought some stories from her. And she's just an amazingly good writer. And this is also her first tie-in work. And it was funny because when I first asked her if she was a fan of the Green Hornet, she says, yes, I love the Kato show. Although her story actually doesn't focus on Kato, it focuses on Casey on this case.
Yeah, then that's a great thing we have these POVs that are a little. We got to experiment, which was great. Like I said,
fun.
We have one. It's Kevin and Kim May, who wrote together, as he calls her, his writing Padawan. Kim May. They wrote Kato's Day Off, basically. And so it's all Kato with very little Britt. And like Keith just said, we have one from Casey's POV. And Casey plays a big role in Megan's story as well, which is why we brought in these different voices, just to get different perspectives and so forth. One of the great things, though, that everybody did was really capture the feel of the era, right? Like it feels like these could have been written in the pulp era.
Sure.
These guys did an amazing job across the board. I would also be negligent if I didn't mention our introduction, which is a conversation between Peter J. Wax, who worked on Heroes and other things, but with Paul Jenkins. Is that a name you guys know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mr. Marvel Civil War and Inhumans. He basically saved Marvel Comics, and he talks about the legacy of the Green Hornet and how it influenced the writers he worked with, how it influenced, so many generations of comic book creators. I was just thinking about, we were talking about that triple identity, and you think of X Factor, the first series of X Factor, which that was Walt Simonson.
Yep.
Did that.
Louis Simonson. It was Louis Simonson.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
Louis Simonson. Oh, okay. Sorry.
He wrote it,
And
yeah.
I just remember the covers.
Well,
And they were basically mutant hunters that were actually not mutant hunters, but mutant rescuers, but they were kind of villains disguised as heroes disguised as villains, right? So you see that trickle effect even has lasted into modern comics and so forth.
Sure. If you haven't backed it, get out there,
One of-
back it right now. Kickstarter campaign going on. Yeah, Keith.
I was just going to say a big part of the fun was being able to write in that era. In particular, being able to look back on the era with the perspective of history that we have now, 50 odd years later. In my story, one of the things I focused on was what was happening in Chinatown in Detroit, which I didn't realize when I first conceived the story, but I was digging into the research. When the interstate highway system was built, and this happened in New York too, the interstates were basically razing through neighborhoods and destroying or bisecting and destroying entire neighborhoods to build in highways. And one of the ones that fell victim to that was Detroit's Chinatown. And so one of the things my story deals with is the effect that had on that particular community. And there's two stories that reference the 12th Street riots that happened in Detroit in the late 60s also. And just it's a wonderful way to look at the history and really play with it, with the advantage of knowing everything that happened after it. That as a writer, that's always tremendous fun to dig yourself into an era in the past
Yeah.
and explore it.
Yeah, and work on that history into your own stories. That's fabulous. It's called the Green Hornet Epic Anthology, and Keith,
Actually,
David.
it's called. Let me just be very
No, yeah.
specific. The Green Hornet and Kato Detroit Noir City, play on Detroit Rock City. So Detroit Noir City, 90th anniversary, because on January 31st, just a little while ago, was the 89th anniversary of the radio show's first broadcast. And now we're leading into the 90th anniversary. So this anthology is leading the way for the 90th anniversary of the character. And
so
that's
it's so phenomenal as we crest the goal line of getting fully back, because you're right up against it. I don't see any way it's not gonna happen. But what's the lead time gonna be, do you think, for backing to print?
So that's not my purview. I am just an editor. What was the character in Labyrinth? I'm just a worm. So I don't.
The book, however, is finished, so it
Yes.
shouldn't be that long.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So, a lot of it has to do with like the alternate cover, and the illustrations, illustrations for each of the stories, and there's like 10 stories. So that's going to take a little while and so forth. But yes, the book is finished. It's just a matter of, what are our stretch goals? Are we going to have 2 covers? Are we going to have interior illustrations?
Sure.
Are we going to have a bonus Timothy Zahn story and so forth?
Yes.
So, that's really what will slow down the process. But we want those things. We desperately want them. So yeah, please back us, hit those stretch goals. I can't wait to see what Dennis does to what scenes he's going to pick out of some of these stories. It's going to be, and all the authors get to say what scene they would love to see the best out of it.
I've already started talking to Dennis, so yeah.
Okay, Miss.
I've known Dennis a very long time. I knew Dennis when he was an intern and nobody knew who he was.
Right.
He interned at Byron Price back in the 90s when I was an editor there. I knew him before he was famous.
Yeah. Well, and then so you know how amazing his work is. So he was
very much.
And Matt Wagner, come on, Matt Wagner for the cover. Might as well throw Batman on there as well. You know, I mean, Batman Grendel Green Hornet crossover. Love it. Would love to see that.
I love when Wagner
his
shows
cover,
up on the
as
show.
you guys have seen the cover, and that's not the final one. We're actually going to reveal the final cover here real soon.
Nice.
But that's just our Kickstarter cover. But yeah, it's his work is amazing, and it's been such a pleasure to work with him and Dennis and literally every one of the authors. Just have been amazing to work with. So easy, so few edits needed on their stories, and yeah, it's been great. It's been a great experience. It's probably one of
David has been a wonderful editor to work.
There you go.
Stop it. Stop it.
And I'm not just saying that to suck up. I worked with a lot of editors over the years.
All right, I got you in the I got you in the next one, Keith. You can stop now.
No, this was also especially cool for me. I've been doing media tie-in fiction for 30 years. I've worked in like 35 different licensed universes, but I'd never worked with the Green Hornet before. So this is, a chance to do something I hadn't heard before, and it was wonderful.
Can't wait to get it into my hot little hands and start turning some pages. I'm just looking forward. I know Kory is too. So
very much so.
And with that, David, Keith, we can't thank you enough. We've hit our time limit here for the Green Hornet Case Files, and can't thank you guys enough. And excited to see where this goes.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for your time.
And if you have comments, questions about this podcast at greenhornet66.com, and you want to do the commercial part there, Kory, to get people online for us?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys, if you got the chance and feel like supporting what we do, like we said, we're working within a little bit of a new format that seems to be working really well, especially for getting these interviews done. But we're bumping up against the free version of it. We need to move on a little bit. So if anybody was willing to help out, Ko-Fi, Ko-Fi, or coffee.com/Green Hornet Case Files.
Yep. We'd appreciate if you like what we do, and can spare a couple of bucks for a Ko-Fi or a coffee. We'd appreciate that very much. And check out the Kickstarter campaign going on right now, and
we will have the link in the show notes.
Yep, we did last episode, and we'll do it again, and we'll make this happen. So with that, my friends, thank you for joining us for episode 23, and looking forward. We had so many things that people keep texting me, Kory. We've got some exciting things ready to happen.
It's going to be awesome. Thank you guys so much.
All right, with that,
let's roll.
As the night envelops the city once more, our journey through the hidden alleys of history and valor comes to a close. You've been riding shotgun with the Green Hornet Case Files, where the echoes of the past meet the voices of the present. Tune in again for the next thrilling adventure, where shadows speak, secrets unfold, and the legacy of the Green Hornet continues to inspire. The Green Hornet Case Files is a Grail Productions podcast. The Green Hornet is owned exclusively by Green Hornet, Inc. Until next time, vigilant listeners, keep your wits sharp and your spirit unbreakable.